Good Shabbos, everyone. Tonight we celebrate the beginning of Shabbat, and as we move into the month of March. It's hard to keep track of time nowadays. We move into the month of March, and normally in April, we celebrate the holiday of Passover, but this year, as you know, the Jewish holidays are very early. And in fact, in just a few weeks, 3 weeks from tomorrow night, we celebrate the holiday of Passover. And this year has been, of course, a difficult year for us, especially as Houstonians. On top of the COVID pandemic, we're still, many of us, dealing with the effects of that terrible winter storm just a few weeks ago. Our lives have been turned upside down. We've all been more busy than ever before trying to navigate this new world. And so many of us may be asking, well, Rabbi, why should I even worry about Passover? I've got enough on my plate right now. Why should I conduct a Seder? Why should I give up not just bread, but all bread products for the 8 days of the holiday of Passover, which begins just a few weeks away? To answer that question, I want to tell you a story that didn't happen here or even in Israel. Or the story I've told before, but I think it's an important reminder. A story that happened in all places in Japan during that tsunami of 2011. You may remember that tsunami from 10 years ago, the scenes of the massive destruction, all caused by an underwater earthquake that created a tsunami that wiped out entire villages. You see from the pictures, it was a devastating tsunami. It destroyed villages and killed thousands. In Japan, there's an ancient fishing village named Marima. And over 1,000 years ago, another large tsunami hit that ancient fishing village. When that tsunami came 1,000 years ago, knowing they were going to be flooded after they had felt an earthquake, the ancient villagers sought safety on the closest hill. But they didn't realize they had entered a deadly trap. A second wave, which had reached the interior of the island through an inlet, was speeding over the rice paddies from the opposite direction. The waves collided at that hill and killed those who had taken refuge there. To signify their grief and to advise future generations, the survivors of that tsunami 1,000 years ago erected a shrine that, believe it or not, still exists today. There's a picture of that shrine, 10 centuries old. A shrine put up by those survivors from 1,000 years ago to warn future generations. Well, sure enough, centuries later, on March 11th, 2011, the Marima Tsunami Warning Tower, which was supposed to sound an alarm, was silent, toppled by the earthquake. And without the benefit of an official warning system supported by modern science, the locals in 2011 relied on the lesson that had been transmitted generation to generation, Lador Vador. Everyone in that fishing village, from the oldest to the youngest, knew the story from 1,000 years ago about the 2 tsunami waves that collided at the shrine. So everyone in that village knew exactly what to do. Instead of taking refuge at the closest hill, the one with the shrine, they took the time to get to higher ground farther away. And sure enough, from the safety of their vantage point, they saw those 2 tsunami waves collide at the hill with the shrine, just like it had happened 1,000 years before. Reaching out to the distant past, to long-gone ancestors and a deeply embedded story, a community remembered and lived out what it had been told. And that story, generations past, saved countless lives in 2011. I love that story because the same is true with the Jewish people. We too, every Passover, reach out to the distant past to long gone ancestors and a deeply embedded story, to remember and to live out what we have been told. We do so every spring, faithfully. Jews of all stripes, Jews of all religious observances, from the most secular to the most religious. Through the observance of Passover, the 4 cups, the salt water, the maror and the choroset, the lechamoni, the poor bread, the matzah, to no chametz, no wheat, oats, rye, barley are spelt for 8 days. And that means no bread, no pita, no cereals, and my favorite, no pretzels. And no beer either for 8 days. That's what our people have done for generations. Therefore, because of that, we have a long embedded memory in our own collective Jewish DNA, because our ancestors have kept Passover not for 1,000 years, but for 3,000 years. Therefore, we have a memory that we were once strangers in a strange land. With that memory, we remember to be good, to be kind, to be generous to the stranger. Because through Passover, we recall what it is like to be oppressed, to be in need. During the Passover Seder, we proclaim, Halach ma'anya, let all people, Jews and non-Jews, all people who are hungry, come into our homes and eat. And in so many ways it has worked. There's a reason that we as Jews continue to be on the forefront of helping those on the margins of society. It's a history we can be proud of. There's a reason that Jewish organizations and specialized Israeli army units are normally the first on the scene to help victims anywhere they may be, often to places where there are no Jews. Israelis are often first to get a hospital up and running in places like Haiti, the Philippines, or even Japan. Years ago, I'll never forget, Israel was recognized by the United Nations for its work helping to contain Ebola in Western Africa. If the United Nations recognizes Israel for something good, you know it had to be for something very special. There's a reason that Israel, with all of its own challenges, shares so many technological breakthroughs in agriculture, medicine, and science with third world countries across the globe. The reason is Passover. That spring reminder is there. We don't forget what it's like to be broken, to be in need, to be marginalized, to be in need of support and help. So we're told, we're inspired to do something about it. But my friends, without keeping Passover, without doing a real Seder, without giving up bread products, without doing all the work necessary for this very busy, a lot of work in preparation for this very busy holiday, will our children, will our grandchildren, will the youth of our community know that we as Jews must help the needy, aid the oppressed, and befriend the stranger? Like those Japanese villagers, we too have a long embedded memory in our own collective Jewish DNA, but without a real and meaningful Passover, will the future of our people have that same DNA? We keep all the Passover observances not just because it's tradition. We do them in order that we internalize the central message of Pesach. As Jews, it is our mission. It is our reason for being, to help those in need. There's no greater message for our children and for all of us, one with no Jewish guilt at all. I recently read that on the popular website Urban Dictionary, a Jewish guilt trip is defined, one that's laid out by Jewish parents, as the most powerful force in the universe. But in this day and age, I don't think it's true when it comes to Jewish observances. I see it often, especially with our young today, the millennials, with Generation Z. They're too much part of the greater world around them to keep Jewish traditions simply out of guilt. And so they want to know the reasons why, the reasons behind our customs and our traditions and our practices. Why should they choose to do something? Why be Jewish? Why do Passover? And Passover, with all its great customs and traditions, is about making us better and kinder, ready to do more of those in need. That's the reason. Perhaps a reason that will speak to our young more than ever before. Because guilt won't work. Nostalgia won't work. You need all of it. And especially, you need a compelling reason, the reason why we do Passover every year. I hope this year you'll consider doing more for this holiday than you've ever done in the past. And you still have 3 weeks to prepare. And we at Beth Yeshurun are here to help, to answer any questions you may have, to guide you, to be there for you. The choice is yours. So this March at Beth Yeshurun, we've decided every Friday night and every Saturday, anytime we're giving a sermon, to prepare you for Passover, to give you advice, to teach you parts of the holiday, to help prepare you for the holiday that we get to celebrate every spring. And every Friday night, Kenner Finkelstein will teach us a melody that many of us will sing at our Passover Seders. So tonight, to begin, the cantor will speak a little bit about and lead us in that song we do towards the beginning of a Seder every year, Halachma.
Thank you, Rabbi. Halachma anya, this is the bread of affliction. The language sounds like Hebrew, but it isn't Hebrew. It's a language called Aramaic, which is even older than Hebrew, and it was the language of the Jews around the time of the temple and the time that we were in Babylon. So this is towards the beginning of the Seder when we speak about what's called the Magid, which is the history of the coming out of Egypt.
Shabbat.